What is cracking internet, and welcome to Raz TV. I'm your host Raz, today bringing you my first ever speed build in the Sims series. That's right, today I'm going to be building a little voodoo lodge for the witch doctor who I created last episode. My idea for this house is really kind of a swamp shack meets curio shop. I want it to be something that you'd expect to find sort of out of the way, the kind of place that Sims would go to when they wanted to solve problems that needed a little bit more of a gritty kind of supernatural touch. It's not the place that you would go for bread and milk. So in that vein of thought, I really wanted to do quite a small structure. As you'll see here, the structure itself I'm making is quite tiny, and also run down. I wanted the structure to look like something he could have perhaps made himself, or something which was made quite some time ago. But yeah, it's not going to be the most lavish place. We'll leave it at that. I took a lot of inspiration looking at pictures of kind of boat houses from Louisiana, kind of the bayous and that. As you can see here, I was playing around with some corrugated iron and that. I really wanted to look shabby, but in the end I did end up going with this kind of murky looking wood, which I think is pretty cool. As you can see here, I'm just kind of messing around with the structure itself. I ended up using these kind of little wooden columns for the porch here. Had a bit of trouble with it at first. As you'll see when I place the columns, it goes through the roof. But I did manage to fix that just by raising the foundation, which actually worked out quite well because then I could use this elevated foundation, which I think is perfect for that swampy vibe. The front sort of wall for the house, I did want to be a different color to the rest. Not sure why. I just saw a lot of pictures of houses like that, so I thought I would do the same. And for the roof, I decided to go with a thatch here because I want to give it that sort of tribal-esque vibe. It's obviously not tribal, but it's going for that look because it wants to evoke that kind of sensation for his customers, so to speak. Just messing around with windows and things here. I don't end up using these windows in the end. I did a lot of restructuring to begin with, just because I wanted to get the right shape for it. Here you can see I ended up doing a sort of a smaller addition to the house on the side, and I quite like that in the end. Deleting the pre-existing trees there. Those obviously came with the original lot in Glimmerbrook, and just trying to get the house in the right spot now. I did end up adding this little side chamber to the house, which eventually ends up being or becoming the bathroom. I put that kind of skewed roof on there with, as you'll see, corrugated iron, because I wanted it to look like a late addition to the house, almost something that was built on extra, because I want to give it really that shambly or shambled vibe, I should say. And I think that worked out quite well in the end. Just putting the windows back on, they ended up getting deleted when I moved the house the first time. And now just working on the interior. I wanted the interior of the house to kind of match the exterior. Not the kind of guy who would bother with wallpaper, and I think it makes it look a bit more shabby. That little room on the side there is going to end up being his bedroom. I sort of wanted something a bit open, like you could walk in and see it. The actual thing that I wanted for his bedroom was a beaded curtain. That would have been the perfect addition. But of course that doesn't actually exist in The Sims 4, and I don't use mods, so I just went with an arch. For the bathroom windows, I kind of was experimenting around trying to find something that looked kind of dingy and almost claustrophobic. I ended up just using the same windows all throughout these little squares, which I placed quite high, and did the exact opposite obviously for his bedroom windows, made it a lot more open. Like I say, my vision for this house was something that you would find in a swamp, so I built it in a way that, you know, he wouldn't mind, say, when he was in bed having open windows. He probably wanted, if anything, very humid vibe to it. For the bed, I messed around with quite a few beds, or I had a look at a few beds, but the only thing that really gelled with me was this one with the mosquito net here. It didn't quite take my fancy, as you'll see. I think it has sort of these kind of weird patterns on the bottom that look vaguely voodoo-like, but it didn't really do it for me, but I kept it there as a placeholder. Again, I'm just using the fan there because, as I say, we're going for a humid atmosphere, and an old rusted fridge, which I quite like. Now here you'll see I place one of these kind of tiki bars in the center here. Like I say, I do want the house to look kind of like a curio shop, and that's the idea there. And of course, just a little bathroom, male-female door, just to give it more of a store-y kind of vibe. Again, just moving around some of the stuff there, testing out the bedroom, but I ended up putting it back in the end. But yeah, like I say, I really want this to look like a curio shop, so that's the vibe I'm going for with that tiki bar and the bathroom door. Now, for the bathroom itself, I wanted to go for something which was kind of not the sort of place that you would want to use as a public toilet. I wanted to go with a public toilet look, and I wanted it to be the kind of place that you would say walk in and either hold your nose or walk straight back out again. Probably the kind of place that would be using a septic tank. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I was messing around with some various showers and baths for the room, but in the end, I didn't quite find anything I liked, as you'll see here. So I just went with the sink and toilet. Made it look very much like a public bathroom. You wouldn't really find a bath or shower in a public bathroom, or not most of them anyway. Not ones like this. I just went with kind of a bathroom mirror, sort of like a medicine cabinet, because obviously witch doctor, medicine man, we want that vibe. And I made the toilet paper go the wrong way round, just to give it that extra uncomfortable feel. For the porch, I did want a sofa. I really wanted a run-down sofa out here, but obviously Sims doesn't really opt for run-down furniture in general, but I did end up finding this kind of, I don't know, pattern sofa, which I think works quite well. The wicker goes well with the general aesthetic. As you can see here, I moved the house a little bit higher on those stilts. Do want it to look very elevated, so it seems more like it's trying to get out of the swamp. Just moving around the structure again. I did quite a lot of restructuring as I went through it. And over here, I had to put on the windows once again. That's the third time I've had to place those windows, so yeah, that's fun. I wanted to make a side door at the back here, somewhere for him to sneak out, where he could at least sneak out behind the bar. And I had some fun with these new L-shaped stairs, which I think is pretty cool. And I just got them to match the front stairs as well. Messed around with them a little bit, but in the end, I like that L-shape the most. And yeah, I decided to pop a cauldron out here as a placeholder. That's, I think, the first time I actually used an item from the Realm of Magic expansion. And that is going to get moved in the end anyway. But he does have to have a cauldron because obviously he is a witch doctor. Just messing around with the mailbox here. In the end, I wanted it close to the house. Almost like the mailman should be frightened off when he comes through here. He'll come to drop off mail and he has to come close to this dingy sort of house. Here I'm obviously just messing around with lights. Didn't quite like those, but I do like those for the entrance hall. And I wanted to use a lot of Christmas lights. I couldn't really find any Christmas lights that sort of gelled with me 100%. But I did get a few. In terms of the actual interior of his bedroom and that, I wanted to find an armoire that was kind of, I suppose you would say almost colonialist in a sense. I wanted it to look very old, something you might find in a really old-fashioned farmhouse. And I think I found some good stuff there. I also used the same sort of idea for the mirror and made it a different color because I don't really want stuff to match in his house. It's sort of a collection of objects. Like you'd find, say, at a old school pawn shop, something like that. I use those spooky Halloween tables so they look old and decrepit. I quite like the look of those. And then for the sides there, I just ended up using some, or messing around with some candles, but in the end I like the look of the oil lamp and just these bottle candles here, although I think I do end up getting rid of those a bit later. For the curtains, I kind of messed around with a few things, but I did end up getting mosquito curtains. As you can see there, I ended up putting that shaggy curtain above the door in lieu of the beaded curtain, and I think that ended up working quite well. And then I just used these. They almost look like mosquito nets just for the side windows. For the rugs itself, I wanted it to look, again, quite messy, quite cluttered, so I ended up using those sequence of rugs, and I even added an extra rug on top of that just to make it look all the more full, I suppose you could say. Just going through decorations here, I really wanted to get those kind of, if you know, those kind of elongated like African masks, but obviously there are none of those in Sims, so I just ended up using the tiki masks, although I think those work quite well in their stead. Once again, just messing around with lighting here. It took me quite a while to actually get the right lighting for this. And I gave up a few times, as you can see. Just switched over to the stove. That's the stove, I believe, from the vampire expansion, and I think it works quite well there. And the back door, just sort of like a barn-like door, looks quite old. And next to it, I just ended up popping this outdoor light, which also looks kind of rusted, got a dingy feel to it, which is what I was going for in general. As you can see here, I'm just messing around with some entertainment systems. In the end, I ended up going with this jukebox, which I quite like. Kind of an old school jukebox. I think it works well for the aesthetic in general, and it's somewhere for him to chill out when he's not busy voodooing people. As you can see, I'm placing some spider webs around as well, because like I say, I wanted the place to look dingy and unkempt, and the spider webs are obviously the perfect tool for that. Right around here, I was just messing around. I was considering putting in a pond, but there was nothing really for that, so I just ended up diverting to this couch, which I'm thinking of kind of as a waiting couch, somewhere to wait while you're going to be served by him, because like I say, he is obviously a broker of these voodoo magics, these curios. He is providing a service, though not one that people would freely solicit. He would be the kind of guy who would come to in dire need, and only if you're willing for a very what's the word, shady, I suppose, means of solving your problems. Yeah, so I'm just messing around with the kitchen once again. Yeah, once again, I wanted the sideboards, or what do you call those, the countertops, to look kind of dingy, but I didn't like the dingy one they had, so I ended up going with those old school ones. There's another item from Realm of Magic. It's kind of just a collection of potions and what is that, bugs and things. I put that I want to say cornucopia. It's not a cornucopia, just that like pine cone above the door, because I thought it gave it more of a pagan sort of vibe to it, if you know what I mean. It looks like he's trying to ward off evil spirits or something with the cones, and some old school paintings and that just on the sides to make it look all the more dingy. I ended up using these bottles here because I liked the lighting on the actual rack of wine bottles. I thought it looked like the kind of rack where you would keep potions and things, and it's got kind of a spooky vibe to it. I think the orange and yellow does quite well for what I want with him, and obviously I had to move the lights around there just to fit the actual kitchen in. I was trying for quite a while to find a bookshelf that I like, but nothing really fits, so I ended up leaving the bookshelf out. I might have to put a bookshelf in later when I actually start playing, but for now, we'll just go with these paintings here. I was messing around with the colors once again, but I just like the orange and yellow for that stand of bottles there. And I tested that one out too, but didn't like it in the end, so I deleted it. Once again, I'm just looking around at lighting, trying to find the right things. Here's the portion where I started working on the actual pond. I did get the idea for this from one of Sim Supply's videos. I can't remember the actual video title, but I believe he was building a lake in that one. I really wanted to build a pond in mine, but I actually forgot you can't build ponds in The Sims 4, so I ended up using this fountain method instead. As you can see, I'm just cutting out a nice little section of swampy water. Well, it's not so swampy at the moment, but we're going to make it swampy in a sec. So I just wanted to look kind of as not man-made as possible. As you can see, I'm using the green water there because, like I said, I want to make it look like a swamp, and just trimming it around the edges to make it seem a little bit more circular. As you can see here, I'm sort of filling it with various lily pads and watery accessories. In the end, I went for quite a lot of water lily pads, a lot of foliage, because like I say, I wanted to look swampy, and I think the best way to do that is to put a lot of greenery in the pond itself. So that's what I'm doing there. And then I ended up using the move objects cheat to put these rocks around the edge, just to kind of disguise the fact that we are using these square edges for the pond. It's not a perfect circle, but you'll see once you put enough of the rocks, it actually does end up looking quite okay in the end. I'm quite happy with the way the pond turned out, so just putting around the rocks. I was messing around with different colors, but at the end, I only really ended up liking the gray, so we just stuck to that all around. So as you can see, just finishing up, trying to get a rock on every corner except the ones kind of leading toward the doorway, because obviously I'm going to put sort of a I want to say a jetty, but it's more like a bridge there just to get to the house. So it looks like the wood itself is actually cutting over the water, actually bridging the water. Tried my best there. Don't know how successful I was, but I think it did kind of work out in the end. And I wanted to find a wood once again that looked kind of dingy, kind of old and decrepit, and maybe a little bit withered for the actual bridge. So yeah, once again, I'm just moving the stones out of the way and now working on the actual foliage. I did put quite a lot of foliage around the pond to kind of conceal the fact that it is a pond. As you can see here, I'm working with various grasses and sort of various water plants. Had to add a few more rocks there just to give it more of a rounded vibe. And as you can see, I was kind of haphazard with the plants. I did want them to be dingy in a way, but I also wanted some of them to be vibrant, very much like a swamp. So you get different kinds of plants sprouting up in all different places, a lot of ferns and stuff, a lot of grasses, some cattails. And yeah, I think I did pretty well in the end. As you can see on those corners where I'm putting the plants now, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to tell that this fountain is actually a fountain, starting to look more like a pond. It still does look kind of man-made, but in the end I was sort of happy with it. I did get a swampy enough vibe to it, and I just tried to put as many plants as possible just to get it covered. Yeah, you can see I'm using sort of a dirt wallpaper to make it look more, once again, like a pond, and just using wood on the side of the actual jetty to make it look like it is separate from the swamp itself. And then just finishing off the plants themselves. As you can see here, it's starting to look a lot more like a swamp. Again, a little bit man-made, but as we put these trees in and things, it does tend to look a little bit more swampish. I gotta stop saying swamp, it's throwing me off. Anyway, move the mailbox forward again, but I'll end up moving that back and I turn objects off. I decided at this point that I didn't really like the bed that I was using. I figured there was really no reason for him to have a double bed. The only real thing it would be for is woohooing, and I don't know who's going to want to woohoo with this guy. I was testing out various other beds. I really did want something that looked quite shabby, but in the end I used that. I quite like the vibe to it, the patterns, and that I think fits with the overall aesthetic, very earthy. I decided to use an animal skin rug for his actual bedroom. I didn't really like that one though. I tried a few different options. As you can see here, couple wicker rugs, but in the end none of them really worked. What I decided to go with instead was this kind of zebra mat. Tried it in both directions, but in the end I liked it with that, so I just kept it as such. So his bed's still in the corner, even though you can see into his room, it's still kind of in a little hidey hole there. So here I was just experimenting with candles on the actual bar itself. I did want some candles here just to give it more of a what's the word? More of a rustic vibe to it, I suppose. And I did like those ones on the side there. Once again, I also ended up using this kind of colonial looking roof lamp, I suppose you could call it. And I had to end up moving the door. The reason for that was I decided to put all the counters on one side, and I figured having the door behind the actual bar seemed more like an escape route per se. It's somewhere where you can get out quickly, which I liked. I was just messing around with the actual structure, but I ended up just having it go straight down. And then, as you'll see here, I pop another little claustrophobic window above the stove there. Tested out some curtains, but didn't really like anything in the end, and also wasn't sure if they might catch on fire. I did also change it to this kind of more pastel looking lamp because I didn't really like the darker green shell lamp shades, I should say. And then once again, I was just experimenting with these actual counters. The dingy ones were cool and they were blue, which kind of matched the bar. But in the end, I went for this sort of old school looking set of countertops, which were actually the ones from Realm of Magic, I believed I used in the end. So that's another piece of content from the new expansion pack, and just had to get rid of those lights too. Once again, as you can see, I did a lot of experimenting with lights, a lot of experimenting with these Christmas looking lights, but I ended up deleting a lot of them, more of them probably than I intended. I did also decide to go with some top cabinets just to make the place look a little bit more cluttered and a little bit more secluded from the outside. I really did want this to look like a cordoned off sort of area, which is why I did those there. And I think it worked out quite well in the end. And that'll act as both his little storefront and his kitchen. And oh, I did put those knives up above the display cabinet, which I think was cool. I thought these neon signs were also a pretty nice touch, gave it sort of again a curio shop kind of vibe to it, and I ended up putting quite a lot of them around the place itself. As you can see, I also used that newspaper wallpaper for the front wall. I think that's cool for a storefront. It gives it sort of I don't know, once again, just playing to that curio shop look. And I ended up putting these neon signs as if they're indicating toward the bedroom and bathroom. I don't know what they say. They're in Simlish, but yeah, I think those worked out well here. Just replacing the sink there because it ended up getting cut off, unbeknownst to me, the last time I moved the room. But here as well, I was just trying to find a towel which fit with the general dingy atmosphere, and a dustpan and brush because, hey, he's not a savage, right? He's not an animal. He still needs to clean up after himself now and then, although it's in a more discreet place, so they don't know he's secretly doing housework when he's not doing voodoo. Over here, I was just placing a few more spider webs, as you can see, just to make the place look a little bit more shabby, as I've said a number of times now. I was trying out with these kind of hanging spider webs in front of the curio stand, but I didn't really like those, so I just ended up putting them in front of the bottle holders. There's got to be a better word for that. Wine rack? I don't know. And I don't know if I ended up putting one next to the fridge, but I did put quite a few in the bathroom, which I liked. Any unoccupied corner, I ended up putting a spider web, so I think that looks cool. And I ended up moving the cauldron to the side as well. So that's where that ended up going too. Here I was kind of just looking around at the shisha pipes. Apologies, I don't know what they're actually called in Sims. I know they blow bubbles, not smoke. But I wanted something like that for him. I was originally going to put it outside, but I thought it might look better inside. And then I had this quirky idea of actually putting it inside his room. So it's almost like you might walk into this curio shop. There's no one at the front counter as you come in, but you might have this plume of, say, smoke or bubbles in this case, drifting out of the room. And that's where he is sitting creepily smoking his bubble pipe, much like the caterpillar in Alice and Wonderland. I shopped around with these different sort of cushions and things, but in the end, I just like that old-looking armchair. Reminds me of something my grandfather used to have, and I think it fits well with the general aesthetic. And as you can see, I actually tried these ghosty boys in quite a few places, but I couldn't really get them to fit. I didn't really like them, so in the end, I just used this set of candles for next to the pipe. Here I ended up finding this crystal skeleton. I tried it out in a few places, but in the end I just liked it in his room, sort of like as a spiritual guard, I suppose, to keep out intruders and ne'er-do-wells, even though he himself is probably a ne'er-do-well. I was trying out a few room dividers, ended up finding this nice little cabinet from the vampire expansion, which has the skull in it. I thought that worked better there than the paintings, so I replaced those with that. And here I was just looking for a few more items for his room. I found this kind of... I actually quite like this. I do end up deleting that in the end, but I did like it. I don't know why I deleted it. And then, of course, I've got this room divider here. Once again, it matches with the mosquito curtains, but in a different sort of color. From here, I ended up putting a weather vane onto the roof. I don't know why I thought the weather vane would work there, but it just felt right. It just felt right to put a weather vane there. And once again, I moved the mailbox right up next to his house so that the postman would have to be frightened away. Probably doesn't get a lot of posts, this guy. Did a bit of terraforming there, just creating a pathway to the house. And once again, back inside, I ended up finding more of these little Christmas lights. These ones are a bit annoying because they don't actually emit light themselves, but they do still have kind of a cool look to them, so I did end up placing them behind the counter once again. Here I've got these herbs, which I'm just going to end up hanging above his bed. I don't know what the function of those is, but it does have sort of a cool vibe to it. Maybe they've got some spiritual significance. I don't know. He might. He's the witch doctor. Here, once again, I'm just playing around with rugs and stuff. I did like the look of that skull mat just there, so I ended up putting that behind the curio counter because it also ended up matching his face, his makeup, which I quite liked. And here, I'm just trying to conceal the cauldron behind some bushes, so passers-by won't see the horrible things that he's doing, like making mac and cheese, which is something apparently you can do in these cauldrons. And I do have that, I don't know what it's actually called, but I do have the woohoo bush behind. So should someone happen to want to woohoo with my witch doctor, I guess that's where it's going to end up being. Tried a few of these kind of bushy looking plants, ended up just going with sort of dulled out colors in the end. And I did want it to look kind of shaggy, these plants as well, kind of, I want to say haphazard. Haphazard's not the word, but kind of prickly, I suppose. Yeah, once again, just terraforming around, trying to make the ground look like it's been used, creating some flower beds there and dusting around the edges with some muddy grass, just to make it look like it has seen some wear. As you can see here, I'm just trying to work on the back of the house. My original idea here was to put a fire pit. That's sort of what I'm looking through a number of items now, but I do end up putting a fire pit, as you'll see here. The reason I wanted a fire pit was once again to give it that sort of spooky vibe to it, but I feel like it was kind of double doing with the cauldron. Here I did give him a clothesline and an old-fashioned laundry basket, because I don't know, I thought that worked. And as you can see, there's the fire pit, but I do end up getting rid of that in the end, though it will be there for the time being. Just terraforming around the house now, trying to make it look more swampy, trying to make it look like it's overgrown, not like it's been cultivated. And there you see I put the willow back in, and once again I just make a little pond to finish off the swampy look rather than the bonfire. Maybe I'll replace it at a later stage, I don't know, and then just finishing off the bottom of the pond to make it look more swampy. As you can see, I'm just sort of trying to replicate what I had in the first two ponds. I think I did a good job with that in the end. It is a little bit smaller than the front yard ponds, but it still does have that swampy vibe to it. And I figure as long as the house is surrounded by these little bogs, it makes it look more like a swamp in general, even if it is only on this specific lot. But I think it does look okay in the end. It's close enough to the water that it does look like there could exist swamps here. So in contrast to the rest of the neighborhood, I do think it can work. Once again, I'm just finishing off the plants here, trying to get it right, everything in the right spot. And once I've covered these edges, I make the tree look smaller and finish off by just making the embankments a little bit more muddy. Turned off move objects again, obviously don't want any accidents, and I put this tree here because my intention was, as you will see in a moment, oh sorry, I did put down this grass first just to make it look like the house was a little bit more overgrown. I was going to put grass on the sides or plants on the sides at first, like creepers, but I couldn't find anything that works. As you can see here, I went back to making the old bath and shower, but I still couldn't find anything that worked. So in the end, I decided to make this kind of outdoor shower from the camping expansion. Almost like he has to go outdoors to wash himself. I think that has more of a rustic feel to it, and I did like it. So I ended up keeping that there in the end. Not sure if it'll be functional, but we'll find that out soon. Ended up putting these little skull or skeletal hands holding the candles at the front of the door, almost like the door itself is alive. And then just worked on the actual dinginess of the place once again, trying to add in these sort of pools of, they almost look like ectoplasm to make the place look more dirty, more weathered, and more inhabited by ghosts and creeps. That's why I've put the little scratch marks on the corners of his bedroom, or I should say the walls of his bedroom. And I did end up using a few more paintings in his room itself. I felt the room was looking a little bit empty at this point, so I wanted to just add a few more things just to make it look a bit more cluttered, as was the intention with the rest of the house. I shopped around with these little ghosty looking creatures, but they didn't really do it for me. They look way too Pokemon, so yeah, I didn't like them in the end. But I did end up using well, I didn't end up using it here, but I did end up using a light in the corner, which you'll see in a little bit. To finish off the bathroom, I put as many puddles on the walls as possible, so the place looked really unkempt, really kind of moldy, kind of grimy. I tried out the spider web there, but it didn't really work. It didn't sit close enough to the window itself. And in the end, for the rug, I just ended up using this kind of rubbery looking mat. I did try the newspapers out to look like maybe it just cleaned something up, but it looked too animal for me, like there was an animal in there, so I decided to get rid of it. So I just did end up using this rubber mat, which I think is okay. It's like a very limited try in terms of making the place less gross. Oh, and for the bin, I put this like barrel bin right next to the toilet. Don't you hate that when there's like a bin placed directly next to a toilet? Just to make the place look a little bit more full as well, I ended up changing the bathroom cabinet to just a cabinet and putting one of those side mirrors, which I think does look a little bit better. For the light in the room, I believe I ended up using just sort of a hanging light over there, And after doing that, I tried to find the right light for his bedroom. Once again, I just ended up using a standing light, as you'll see here. One of these old-fashioned looking things, the kind of thing that would look like it would have been eaten by moths 1,000 times over by now. But I quite like that, so that's what I finished off his bedroom on. And for my final touch, I added like a little alien voodoo doll head there. Spruced up the ground around the outside a little bit, and that basically finishes off the Voodoo house. So yeah, that's the curio shop, guys. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll be uploading my Voodoo Lodge to the gallery just in case anyone wants it. If you happen to enjoy the build, why not let me know by popping a like somewhere down in the corner there, and hey, why not even click the Raz button up at the top and subscribe. But until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.